word it, so then that way, if there's people who want to know more about what we've got going on, I can easily send them this. Asks. Go ahead, start. So, welcome to the Downtown Advisory Board. We're glad to have everybody here. I'm going to do a quick overview of like what the bigger context of everything is, and then go into more of kind of how it is to serve on a city body. Have any of y'all been on city appointed boards before or anything? You haven't been on either? Okay. So there's some particulars being a public meeting that, good. So Main Street program. So sometimes you'll hear us talk about Main Street, and we don't always just mean Main Street as far as the street goes. Sometimes that's referring to this overall program, which is like a state and national thing. So sometimes that gets interchanged. And so this is a little bit of background on that. You could tell Terry that you're not. That's video from the National Main Street, and I guess it's about 10 years old since it said for 240 years. So now that we've got, or let me wait for Terry to go here to come, then we can do introductions. So again, when I talk about Main Street, a lot of times talking about kind of this historic context. And Yvonne, who's been on Main Street for a very, very long time, not Yvonne personally, but the family, can probably talk to some of the history on that. Have you ever been on the downtown committee even before it was brought in at the city or anything like that? Okay. I didn't know if it was any from a long time ago.
I mean, I used to go to some meetings, with my dad,
Okay,
100 years ago.
Yes.
But yeah, but never served it.
okay, cool. So back, it all started with the National Trust for Historic Preservation that, in the 70s, all these buildings were falling apart because the interstate system was built and malls were built. And so then downtowns were falling apart and they wanted to make sure to preserve the architecture. So then they're like, okay, what do we do? And so they did some pilot testing in communities to see what works and what doesn't work. Meanwhile, we were already doing that here in Hendersonville because in 1977 was when they started investigating doing the curved Main Street. So we were kind of doing it simultaneously while the National Trust was working on this project. And so then they developed kind of a framework, which is still more or less what we follow as far as our committee structure and everything to this day, which has evolved over the time. But really that, you know, public-private partnerships are important. The organizational structure is important. Having a person who's a staff, which is me, that's in charge of it to see things through, and then that good design and quality work. So this is probably old too, so there's probably more now, but there's a whole network all across the states of Main Street communities. Accredited programs and affiliate, the difference between the two of those are, so every year we do reporting. And so to be accredited, you have to meet standards for the reporting, which is basically following the framework that they've set out. So every year I have to report, and we are always accredited. But for some communities, it's harder than others. North Carolina, this one is a few years old too, so it might be missing some of the more recent towns. Hendersonville has been in, so that's the National Main Street program. And then there's North Carolina Main Street, which is, so each state has their own coordinating programs. And so a lot of times will, the state Main Street program will do training. Sometimes folks from the Main Street program will come and talk with us, or sometimes they'll come and facilitate meetings. They haven't here, but they can, and it's all a free service as a part of being a North Carolina Main Street community. And we were one of the earlier ones, so we were 86, so we were the 15th one that was a designated Main Street community. And then there's more, and for communities, a lot of times towns will, like their government might change, and then I'll say, why are we participating in this? And they'll leave. And then they try to get back in. And so staying in good standing with them, while sometimes for me on the reporting can be frustrating, it's something important because there's often grant opportunities that are specific for Main Street programs, and different opportunities that we're able to participate in that other communities that aren't Main Street programs can't do. So that framework that they base everything off of is based around these 4 points. And so that's economic vitality, design, organization, and promotion. And that's how we more or less structure our subcommittees. And I'll go into a little bit more of what our subcommittees are, because we do, we follow that, but have a little bit of a twist on it based off of what works for us. But economic vitality for us focuses on buildings and businesses, so private property and things that affect businesses. So that looks at our facade grants, looks at the like zoning things that affect businesses, and a lot with our downtown master plan design. We call that committee our community character committee. And so that focuses on public space and public interaction. So streetscape, public art, landscaping, things like that. Promotion, we call that our events committee, which we'll be looking at kind of updating that because lately they've been focused on the events that we produce as an organization. But because we've got 3 people who are working on them, they're paid staff, there's only so much that the events committee does on that side of things. So I want to shift that to being more on promotions, because I think we could have committees that help more with things like the window decorating contests and like things that are more like merchant focused events and things that we're doing in 7th Avenue. And then organization, that is our board. So that's you guys and everybody, which meets monthly. I'm not going to go into a lot on this. This was the guiding principles, basically to show that it's, incremental and thoughtful processes. We don't just make decisions on a whim. We want to and we don't just do projects because somebody has an idea to do them. We want to make sure that we're following a good process for everything.
So back to those committees, I saw the email where we're not meeting in July and August.
Correct.
Start back up in September?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In August, so every year in August, that first week, staff has a training that we go to. So we're never able to meet in August. And then usually in the summertime, it is kind of hard to get people to make it to things too. And I already talked a little bit about the Main Street benefits, training technical assistance, and also the annual conference that's in March. And so Terry Young and Jacobs attended that with us last year. And so if there's ever any board or committee members who want to attend, that's something that we'll typically be able to pay for the registration in the hotel for that, because it's really the conference is better for board and committee members and businesses almost than staff, because it's stuff that I've been going to these for like 12 years now. So I hear like a lot of the same stuff. And we're also able to do submit for awards and recognition. So every year we can submit a Main Street champion, who is just someone who, it can be a volunteer, a business owner, a group of people that are nominated for what their contributions are to downtown. So most recently it was Mayor Volt, because she's getting towards her retirement. We wanted to recognize her for that. And then we've won several awards. Most recently we won for the Opportunity Fund, which is our loan program that we've gotten funded through Dogwood Health Trust. And we also had won one for the Gray Mill a couple years ago. I guess that was like 5 years ago. Yeah. I know. And then talking about the reporting. So this is stuff that I have to report on every year. And I think it's in the back of the books. There's like some stuff in the pockets, and that it's got like our report card. It just kind of shows the things that we're reviewed on, and that's from the state Main Street. So we have to meet these various standards for reporting. A few things that we have to meet are that we have a board designated by representatives from the district, that there has to be a full-time staff person, that we have a work plan that we follow, we have a dedicated budget, and then we submit all the things to the state. Another thing that we have to submit are statistics. So every year, and I don't have it for 25, 26 because they're due at the end of the month and I haven't finished them yet. But every year we report on statistics that are about facade grants, building improvements, public investment, private investment, new jobs. The jobs is one that's kind of best guess for the most part, because we don't have a clear way of calculating that a lot of times. But the private investment is done through going back to the building permits. So I go through building permits and get the amount that's submitted on that. And then also real estate transactions. So sometimes when there's real big bumps in them, it was because it was like when all of Stuart Rubin's property sold, that was like a giant, I don't even know how many $1 million of a sale that showed on there. And then for public investment, it had like the parking garage and 7th Avenue streetscape and everything like that. Sidewalk improvements, various things. Okay, before we get into the rules and serving on the board, since we've got everybody here, we'll do some introductions. Because I don't know if everybody knows, probably don't know, everybody does not know everyone. So I'll start since I've been talking anyway. I'm Jamie Carpenter, I'm the downtown manager. I've been here since 2020, so going on 7 years now, which is hard to believe. But been doing this type of work for about 5 or 6 years before that. So now I've been realizing that I'm not like the young person anymore, which is kind of a weird feeling. Terry?
Oh, Terry Jacobs, downtown coordinator. I'm definitely not the young person. I came from a hospitality background and I have been here 4 years and do mainly events for the most part, fundraising events.
Scott?
Scott Gash, real estate investor. I know Gary Terry. And yeah.
Gary, I was with Blue Ridge Community College for 12 years and retired. And I've been doing adjunct faculty work in some of their different projects for 10 years.
Terry Young. Which one?
You want me to introduce you?
On property on 7th, government employee, I live in that. And going in all that.
Yvonne Hill, my father owns the Goldsmith by Rudy and been working with him for, I guess, about 38 years. And so been around downtown Hendersonville since he opened in 1970. So
that was before the curve, the street
I
then.
don't remember that because I was,
Yeah.
I was.
What was it?
Yeah, but before they did the streetscape, it would have right
It must have been.
when they were talking about it, probably. That's cool.
Trying to see a lot of interesting changes.
Yeah. And y'all just, was it 70 years or
We had 50 years this year, be 51.
51? Okay.
So
Very cool.
I'm Erica Hodges. I am a real estate agent, but for residential, but I own commercial property around Hendersonville. So 7th Avenue, White Duck Building, Main Street. I probably have one of the ugliest buildings on Main Street right now, but not for too long. It's going to be changing. And the Blue Door on 3rd, and then Moe's Barbecue Building. So, and then it also served on the Economic Vitality Committee for Hendersonville.
Real estate heavy with our
Yeah.
new people, which is good because y'all are vested people because y'all own your building too, right? You want, that's what, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, that's cool. We're doing introductions.
Okay, my name is Ivan Acosta. I'm an intern for the city of Hendersonville and currently a college student, so
Welcome.
thank you.
I'm Dakota Parker. I'm a downtown events coordinator. I've also been here for about 4 years. I come from a hospitality degree and background, so I run the farmers market on 7th, so I'm 7th Avenue invested as well.
So kudos on the farmers.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Lou Holloway. I'm the community development director. I think I know just about everybody here, one way or the other. I have now been with the city 15 years at the beginning of September. So
My background's in landscape architecture, and I worked for the state Main Street program before coming here to start the city's city-run Main Street program. So.
I told Lou we're having lunch, so he said.
More man.
And then,
You can tell I'm a good boss, right? I mean,
and then Lou will come to our downtown board meetings sometimes, and then sometimes our board will say, uh-oh, Lou's here, what do we do wrong? As I mentioned kind of at the beginning, so serving on the Downtown Advisory Board is a public body. That's, you all know, you went through the process of getting appointed by City Council. Previously, before 2021, we had we had a Main Street Advisory Committee and a 7th Avenue Advisory Committee. And they were really all talking about the same stuff. Main Street wanted to know what 7th Avenue was talking about. 7th wanted to know what Main Street was talking about. So we just merged them together to have a bigger downtown advisory board. So they have the 5 stakeholders from 7th Avenue and 5 from the Main Street MSC. So the stakeholders are business or property owner or designee. And then 5 at-large members. So that's just people who must reside within Henderson County. A lot of times those are volunteers from our events or people who just love downtown. So it gets a good mixture of who we've got on the board. And then this is our board list, which I think I might have missed somebody on there. And I didn't get it fully filled out. There's a more filled out board list in the packet that has everybody's contact information. There is a copy of the rules of procedure in the book. It's basically the bylaws for the board. And so anytime if it's not often, but if there is any kind of where the meeting is starting to go awry, we refer back to the rules of procedure for making sure that we call the vote and move topics on, and have a good following of how a vote should go. So it's basically Robert's Rules of Order, just motion, second, that kind of thing. We do have in our board that if a member misses 3 consecutive meetings or half of our regular meetings, it actually changed to may cease to be a board member. Because people always, like, life happens and you miss things. That's fine. But whenever it's like when you miss a lot, then and there's people who've applied to be on the board who not everyone gets. We had more people to apply than got appointed. And so if you're missing a lot and then sometimes come in and aren't aware of what the board has already talked about in the previous months before, it just kind of creates some frustration there, because then it's, they say, oh, we already talked about this a month ago, kind of thing. So that's just kind of general rule of thumb for attendance that we try to keep with. And then open meeting laws. So all of our meetings are open to the public, so the public can always attend on our agendas. We always have public comment for the board. We don't have public comment on the subcommittees. So anyone can attend, and I record them and I put them on YouTube, which is linked on the city's website. So people can always go back and rewatch all of our previous meetings. Meetings are held the second Tuesday of each month at 4. Next week, we'll have our organizational meeting, and so we will approve the schedule. So if there is a consensus of wanting to change that day and time, we can do that, but we've done fairly well with that second Tuesday, but that's always something that we could consider doing. Being a public body, this doesn't apply to, it applies to us, but it's not as serious as, say, like the planning board or historic preservation commission that is has a legal authority over decision making. But if there are, there is it the two or more? So that means if like three people are talking at the same time, they shouldn't be talking about board business, you know?
So you have to have a quorum for you not to be talking.
Okay, so it's not two or more, it's,
Yeah, is composed, yeah, so that's just saying that like to be a public body, you have to have
Okay.
two or more people.
okay. That's where I had always got confused. I'm like, well, if three people are sitting together talking about downtown, and that's, it's, you don't want to get seven of you together to talk about things that will be a part of board business, because then that makes it a public meeting.
That's right, without that being noticed.
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
it's gonna get in. You all don't necessarily, I mean, you do have a budget. Jamie oversees a budget, so there are like real impacts and action items. But the idea is that a body does not take action without being in the public and having let the public know that it planned on taking action so that everybody has the chance to hear whatever that might be. So.
And yeah, we're fortunate, like our rules of procedure has information on like quasi judicial hearings, but there won't be a situation where that's planning board of adjustments, that's that kind of thing. We do sometimes, and actually pretty often, and this will happen at next week's meeting too, is the board will hear, policy proposals and provide input and then vote to recommend or not recommend, or recommend with changes or kind of endorse things or not, because city council does rely on the downtown board to be the eyes and ears for downtown, basically. And downtown being Main Street and 7th Avenue. So we've got our subcommittees that I mentioned before. So we've got our events, economic vitality, and community character. I also put in that email that the economic vitality and community character always meet on the first Tuesday of each month. And then events meet on the first Thursday. The events team does take a break in the summertime just because we're too busy doing the events. So a lot of times the subcommittees they'll be the ones who kind of get into the weeds of things, trying to keep the real detailed review of stuff out of the board if we can. So that way the subcommittees can recommend. And I'll talk a little bit more about when that'll be coming up at this next meeting.
So subcommittees have people on them that aren't members of the board.
Yes.
And is that just something whoever shows up and wants to be part of it can, or does it go through?
The downtown board will, and we'll have that on the agenda for next week's meeting too. And then if people want to be added mid-year, they can also be added. People can always attend. And usually the subcommittees are a little bit more flexible, where like if someone's in the room, they can contribute to the conversation, unless it's starting to get a little too out of sorts, and because they can't necessarily vote on something.
Okay.
But that's a good question. But yeah, but it's open, but the downtown board will vote on the members of it. And feel free to go ahead and start digging in. And we've got, I think everyone heard, we've got soft drinks and some water in the refrigerator.
And are you wanting us to serve on a committee as part of being on the board?
That's ideal. Yeah, we do have some board members who are not on committees, but we prefer that everybody joins the subcommittee. All of our meetings are found on the city's event calendar. On the city's website, which city's website's not going to change here in a couple months, but there's a calendar that has all of the upcoming meetings. The downtown meetings are also on the downtown page, which is downtownhendersonville.org. And then all of our agendas and minutes are found, and this can all be found on the city's website too. This is for all city boards and committees across the board are found here. And I also upload the meeting recordings to the downtown. Sometimes I do get a little bit behind on that though. But we'll have the agendas and the minutes here. We do have a set meeting, rules of procedure. And so we follow this meeting format for the board and the committees, where it has the call to order. We approve the minutes, then open it up for public comment. There very rarely is public comment. There's very rarely public that come. Again, and then they approve the agenda, and then we have committee reports. Then at the end of the meeting, we'll have any new business, unfinished business, formalization.
So since the meetings are open to the public, do you ever have a situation where you do a closed meeting?
No.
Okay.
No, there wouldn't be any, I don't think there would be a scenario where we would have, unless there's some, because I don't think we would need about economic development. That would be a close. Okay.
There's very limited reasons why not to do those.
Yeah.
So
Good.
likely that you will.
We haven't had any since I've been here. Has there ever been any?
No.
And always feel free to find me any. That's good, Gary.
You had to consult with an attorney or something. That's probably the most likely situation.
And I don't know that there would be, because anytime that, if it were to be where we'd have to consult with an attorney, it'd really be a city council item at that point. It's above y'all's pay grade. I prefer that. So going into the program and what we do and a little bit more. So we we have a mission statement that we rewrote, I think a couple of years ago. We readopted a new mission. And I'll talk a little bit more on the Friends of Downtown here shortly, but mission being the Friends of Downtown and Downtown Advisory Board collaborate to preserve and enhance the vitality of downtown Hendersonville's districts by initiating policies, investing in capital improvements, and placemaking to create a quality experience. Basically covers pretty much everything that the downtown board will be working on or reviewing. And then our vision, and part of the format of this vision has to do with some of our reporting for the Main Street program. But the vision, so what we want downtown to be is the epicenter of activity for the most meaningful destination for locals and visitors. At the heart of cultural and community activity, featuring safe, accessible streets and trails that support thriving, authentic local business. So, you'll also hear us talk about MSDs a lot, and since y'all are property owners, you probably see that on your tax bills. And so when we're talking about the geographic area that the downtown board covers is Main Street and 7th Avenue. It's the blue for Main Street and the red for 7th Avenue. Those are our municipal service districts. And so that's like when you get your property tax bill, you'll have like your city tax, your county tax, and your MSD tax. And that MSD tax is basically to provide services above and beyond what other taxpayers receive. So the best example of that is like the landscaping and the hanging baskets. That's just a portion of the budget, but it is like the landscaping and the beautification is probably one of the biggest things that come from the MSD. That and in wintertime, the clearing off the sidewalks if it snows. The trash pickup that we just have on Main Street, the signs that point to the avenues, all the things like that. In addition to that, our staff time gets proportioned out through those budgets.
And the hanging baskets are phenomenal. Year after year.
And have you noticed any difference this year compared to any previous years?
I'm just amazed every time I drive through, so
Good.
it's something
Well, good. That's exactly what we want, because one big thing that changed in our budget, so up until this past year, we had a contracted landscaper who did all of our hanging baskets and all of our landscaping. He was retiring, and to try to rebid that out, we would never find someone who, one, knows everything, and two, will be the price that we were paying. And so we over the course of the last couple of years, we brought that in-house. And so the hanging baskets were done by our in-house public works. And so our main goal in all of that was that nobody noticed a difference. So that's exactly what I want to hear.
Because I know what it takes to take care of a hanging basket. I drive through and I see all those hanging baskets and I say, oh my God.
Yeah,
I actually took a picture as I was walking in here.
nice.
But I was curious if they came from like Van Wingerden or something. But
No,
then
they,
big company.
Yeah, they get the plants and and then previously it was landscapers, then we planted them and then they stay in a greenhouse for a month or two before coming out. And and this year was the first year that all of them are switched over to, they're called self-watering or watering retention. They have to be watered the same amount as the previous ones, but they do hold water better. Because the past ones were like the coconut beds, just water drains right out of it, hold the water better. And have a guy in the public works department who in the summertime, basically his full-time job is coming in at like midnight to 7 a.m. watering. Yeah. Yeah, and hoping he stays forever because he really likes it. But yeah, I feel like the landscaping is the most visual and best example, and that's sometimes, not often, but sometimes we will get businesses that are like from outside the district asking, why am I not on the website, or why don't I have this or that, and I have to go and explain like, well, there is an additional tax for it, and then they're like, well, I pay taxes. I'm like, not quite, you don't pay that much. But it does, I mean, people, Main Street's a premium real estate for a reason. And I think part of that is how pretty it is. Just a little bit of a timeline on the history for Main Street. So in 1975, so also when y'all opened, the municipal service district was established, and that, from what I've read, it was really the business property owners who wanted it, because it was just dead, and so they were, and I've also was told by the state Main Street folks that this was the first one in North Carolina. I don't know. And we do tend to be an example for a lot of communities. Up until 2011, so some communities, the municipal service districts are operated by a nonprofit. And that's how this was up until 2011. And so like the staff is a nonprofit staff and not a city staff. And that's how my old job in Tryon was. It wasn't a municipal service district, but it was just a nonprofit. And so if you go to any of the conferences and stuff, you'll hear people talking about their different setups, which I think we have a much better setup than a lot of other places because we've got just that stability of being with the government. The 7th Avenue MSD was established in 1998, and that was also self-imposed. Those properties there they saw what it did in Main Street and wanted to do that in 7th. And then that was brought into the city in 2015. And so once those two programs got brought into the city, then they're able to get so much more resources because next slide is budget. So the budget, it's not just the tax income, it's the tax income plus a portion of, sales tax. So the city receives a sales tax distribution. And there's a whole complicated formula of how cities and counties receive sales tax from the state that I can't even explain. But what I can explain for us is of the amount of sales tax revenue that the city receives, the district budgets get a proportional amount. So 5% goes towards the Main Street budget and 1% goes to the Seventh Avenue budget. And then our staff time is split, as you can see on there, for Main Street, and then on the next slide for Seventh Avenue. And honestly, Seventh Avenue, as far as staff time, gets a pretty good deal out of things because like Dakota's there half of the year, but for the farmer's market. So it all comes out pretty good for everyone. And that was part of the reason why, over the years, we tried to equalize the tax rates to that 21 cents. Seventh went up, Main Street went down, and then the property tax revaluation kind of helped even that out. This just shows the extent, like what the expenses are as a portion of the budget. The personnel is a lot higher than it used to be because we brought the public works in-house. So the contracted services used to be the biggest piece of that pie, but then now that we had to bring the landscape and all that in-house, it changed that. And then debt service for Main Street is for this building. So whenever the downtown board wanted to have public restrooms, and the downtown board and the city council were looking at options, and they purchased this building and renovated it for the restrooms. So the debt on that. And then you'll hear us talk about the Friends of Downtown nonprofit. And so that is, the Friends of Downtown is a 501c3 nonprofit, which is what we use for events, income and expenses. And really, especially Terry and Dakota, they don't really operate any out of city budget except for where they get paid from. Like all of their expenses come out at the nonprofit. When it first started, it was just Rhythm and Brews because they figured out that the city can't sell beer. And so then they established this nonprofit. And then now, over the course of several years, all of our events have transitioned to that, which makes it helpful for us and as the board because it's almost like some discretionary funds that we, like if we have a project that comes up, if the Friends have the budget to do it, even though the downtown board and the Friends board are different or separate, the downtown board will typically make any kind of spending decisions or votes. This next slide is from 2 years ago, but it's just the general budget for the Friends of Downtown. And we've got a pretty good nest egg in that account that we've had over the years. A lot of it depends on weather, because with Rhythm and Brews, if we have a rain out, if we have one rain out, we're okay. If we have multiple rain outs, we're not so great. But when we have good years, that kind of goes into basically our savings account to be able to do things like, so the money that's made from those events will go towards like facade grants, to help renovate the exterior of buildings. Terry and Vaughn both have gotten those. Erica will probably be applying for one very soon. And then also, as we're talking more on public art, it can help fund things like that. And then also, just if there's like a marketing or a project that comes up that makes sense, we can decide to give funds for that. We also, after the hurricane, when we did the Love Hendo Business Recovery Fund, because we had money in the Friends, we were able to contribute $15,000 to that. This is just a little bit more on the structure for it. Kind of already talked about that. Staff roles. So we've already introduced ourselves, me and Terry and Dakota. So I mostly, and their titles changed, I haven't updated that. I mostly work on, things related to the downtown board and larger projects like the streetscapes and communicating with businesses and property owners with that. Doing our Main Street reporting, and a lot of infrastructure projects. I still do things with events, but not as much because we've got great people who can run the show. And so then Terry, job title downtown coordinator, she mostly oversees Garden Jubilee, Rhythm Brews, and Barefooting. And then Dakota mostly oversees the farmers market, but we also all work on all of them together, just have our own different roles within that. Also, so those are the events that we produce. There are also plenty of other events that are produced by other entities that we still are involved with, like the Apple Festival and Art on Main and various events. They all have to apply to the city special events committee, which is us, Public Works, Police, Fire, so forth. And for the downtown board, if there are any new events that come up that that's any type of street closure, that will go to the downtown board before it gets any type of approval. The street closures are always a topic of debate. And so we want to make sure that it's, and actually a lot of times with the downtown board, that's helped to have the event organizers hear it, not from us, but from y'all, that like, maybe you should look at going to the visitor center parking lot or to the courthouse, because it's just not an event to the scale that is worth closing the street down, kind of thing, or even on Maple Street. So that's a lot of things that will come to the downtown board. This is just a little bit about some recent projects that we've done over the last 5 or 6 years. The streetscape, which I'm realizing I didn't update all of the slides, so it is not in progress. It's done, or at least phase 1 is done. The parking garage, paid parking, the downtown master plan, opportunity funds, avenue signs. We have the new avenue signs on Main Street that are paneled. Also, a lot of events have started in the last 5 or 6 years. Farmers market started in 2020. We changed bear auctions virtual. We took over Garden Jubilee in 2023. It was previously the TDA. We took over a lot more with holiday events in recent years.
I have a question. I do have people asking me, are they gonna extend further down? Are they gonna extend further down? I say yes, and don't quote me on it, but it may have to wait on a grant, but I don't have a time for it.
Yep,
I just leave it at that.
Yeah, and that's a good answer. We did apply for a federal grant to finish 7th Avenue and do South Main Street. So basically where we have Rhythm and Brews, but we did not receive it.
Yeah, we've taken 2 swings at a larger federal grant for that project. This most recent is called the Build Grant. I think it might have a different name, or it changes almost every year, but it's a major federal transportation funding source. And we got really good feedback after our first round. We haven't gotten we just heard within the last 2 weeks that we swung and missed again. But it's very, very competitive. So there's no, not anything specifically to take from not receiving it.
And they said the last time that it's not typical to receive it on your first application.
So I think we're gonna have to, it's like batting average.
Yeah.
We need 1 out of 3.
But
All-star.
the rest of 7, because they've been doing the water and sewer project, is gonna be repaid.
Yeah.
During the next month or so, I believe.
Repaved and restriped.
Yeah, but that's it, just repaving and restriping right now. That's a good question. I guess a lot, too.
It is a priority
Yeah.
project.
Now, are they gonna repave going down, because, you know, they put in the new water line on
Yeah.
I think it's repaving all of it.
I think it's from the
Jonas and the sewer line, all.
railroad track down to the Greenway and all in that neighborhood.
Everywhere that they.
Why they didn't put a walkway, see, I fuss at Matt about this all the time. But I think it has something to do with a grant too, on Jonas right there, they didn't do a walkway. So,
Didn't do a sidewalk.
no, you got one from the police department, you have it going down,
And it stopped.
and then you go up Beach, and then you cross over Jonas and then go up Cherry, and I'm thinking, so I called Matt, you know, it's my, what y'all doing? Y'all want me to put the work in, I mean, come on, y'all doing sidewalks already, why you stop at mine? Down here, went up here and went up here like. But it's a dead end down here, so why did y'all go this way? You just completely want me to flip the bill. I don't want to flip the bill. Y'all do it, you know?
Sidewalk, some of it.
There's that one spot where I was gonna have to pay.
It's the longest spot.
Yeah, I was like, man, what happened? Y'all keep moving.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. We've gotten that same exact question on Locust, where we had to cut off the streetscape where the art leak is. But then luckily we had the new build come in and he had to finish a little section of sidewalk, so we got a little bit further down. I've already talked about the subcommittees, so I don't really necessarily get into that too much. We also have a work plan that we do. This is kind of just like the cover sheet of the work plan of kind of what our priorities are. And this will actually be, it's 2024 to 2026. So this year we'll be updating the work plan. And I've got more detailed information from the work plan. That's, you know, you can go home at night and look through this book as like you're going to bed or whatever. And so, yeah, over probably when the subcommittees get back going in September, we'll be re-looking at our work plans to see what's next on some of them and what things we kind of gotta have to continue progressing. Then for my last slide, I have how you can get involved. And so Gary asked about the subcommittees. We do like for people to be on the subcommittees if they have the time availability for it. And then also we have some of our board members, which we know everybody's got businesses. It's harder to get involved with events, but we have some of them who started on the board because they were volunteers. And so we've got like a flyer on the back of your notebook about how to get involved with volunteering, because we have some really great volunteers and a lot of them can really attest to how fun it is, and you really kind of get to know a different side of what we do, volunteering. And then, okay, I'm gonna stop talking for a minute and if there's any questions or anything for anybody.
So I take it Friends of Downtown have a board.
Yes, but it's more of that board will typically defer decisions to this board.
Do they meet like monthly or do they just meet period?
As needed. Yeah, so the Friends of Downtown board is the city manager, the city finance director, Lou, and then the chair and the vice chair of the downtown board and the past chair. And so they'll meet to review like the 990 and tax forms. And then if there's any kind of major expense, they'll review that. But then any kind of, as far as the facade grants or things like that, they'll defer to this board. That is something that I have been working on engaging with an attorney for a couple of years now on making sure that our bylaws are okay and cool with that. And so there might be some updates to that. I've been expecting to get my updates for a few years now, but more recently I should be getting them soon. Hopefully. That's a good question that I don't have the best answer for. But we do have a lot of eyes on all of the money that's being spent. So one of the city accountants does the bookkeeping for it. And so we put in, just for awareness for everybody, we put in like the checks and the payments, and then they reconcile and make sure that there's, nothing's crazy, and there's always 2 check signers. Just make sure that any expense that looks out of the ordinary. Because we do have a lot of expenses that go in and out, particularly with the farmers market. Because how the market's set up with the token system, the vendors, there's like the tokens are a form of transaction at the market. And so then we collect the tokens and then we'll cut a check to the vendors every 2 weeks. So there's a lot of goings in and out due to that particular. Next week, when we have our board meeting, you're going to be starting with a pretty, it might be a little, typically we keep it to an hour, hour and a half. This one might get closer to 2 because we have, we'll have to do our elections for chair and vice chair because our chair has left. And so we'll have that. And I'm not particularly sure who will be the chair. So that would be, it might be an interesting conversation for that. And then the other big item, and I printed off a copy of it, which is very long, but it's in the pocket here. And I'm sorry that it printed up, like when you read it, you have to read it this way because of how it printed off. It's in the front pocket. This is about the design overlay district, and it's a Matt Manley, who's the planning manager, long-term planning manager with the city. He's been working with and he's presented to our economic vitality subcommittee. You were in that meeting, right, Erica? And so that subcommittee we've gone through basically line by line in this report, and they've had a subcommittee of the planning board who's also reviewed it. This is essentially taking the design standards that are recommended in our downtown master plan, which was a part of the city's comprehensive plan, and putting it into the zoning code. We don't typically have stuff at the downtown board that gets this, like you almost have to have a college degree to understand what they're talking about. So this one is, don't let that scare you from our first meeting, because it's not always like that. And I'll send everybody, I think I sent it before, a link for the meeting where he already presented about it. You probably hear some of those same things, but essentially, these are design standards that it will be more requirements for people doing new construction. However, it will be requirements that benefit the overall form of the areas. Lou, do you have any kind
of? Yeah, I mean, they are very involved. And I know, so there's been a subcommittee on the planning board that's been working on this for a while. It is more broadly like a comprehensive plan and strategic plan goal. The planning world right now is pretty interesting because of some of the things that our state legislation has done, state legislature. They've been very, very active in that realm and have implemented a couple of different things that make our adopting any kind of new zoning standards just a little extra interesting, but which basically has to do with not creating non-conformities and things like that. We're not allowed to do a variety of things that in the past were not considered, removing property rights, which now are, and so we have to be a little bit more creative. It's a broad context for what we're doing, which makes some of what we talk about just feels more like you're part of a legal conversation than you would like to be. That said, the standards in their form are something that was proposed as a part of the downtown master plan, which was an appendix to our comprehensive planning process. And it is designed in a very broad stroke to support the continued development of a pretty large area around our downtown core in a fashion that's similar to what we already do. So in a way that buildings are pulled up to the street front, you have a more urban core, you're maintaining your block pattern and all those sorts of things. So it has a real big impact, and there's a variety of design requirements in there, and there are some impacts to uses and things like that. So Matt's going to go over all of that at a high level. It is pretty thick, pretty meaty zoning text amendment. It's probably the biggest zoning text amendment we've ever tried to implement. So we will be doing some other zoning text amendments, pretty significant ones over the next 12 to 18 months. Those will probably, some of those will probably come to you all again, but this one in particular, we started with because the downtown committee in concert with the planning board had really prioritized and identified it as a, so.
And the big reason they were prioritizing it is they were mostly thinking about 7th Avenue, and I guess South Main Street too, that like there's areas that are vacant lots that we'd want to make sure that like basically to protect the type of businesses, things that we have and that we want to have as a downtown district, to make sure that it's got the requirements where someone doesn't just come in and build, especially with 7th Avenue, things that's allowed to be built there, but not necessarily in that same form. Like the new construction on 7th now, that's at the corner, that had to get rezoned, and they already wanted to follow this form, but if they didn't, it would be it could have been a much smaller footprint, or it could have been like I always say it could be like a Dollar General that goes in with parking in the front, which is not, the buildings next to it probably wouldn't necessarily want that. And so that was that had been the big concern from a lot of the folks on the board with 7th, where there's the empty lots and the empty lot that
I've already had conversations.
I know you've got a copy of the plan, so that's what we want to have people kind of following that way. And then South Main Street is that next other area, especially with the trail and everything, there are several lots there that it would be a good benefit to have it built in that design rather than in what's currently there with like the parking in the front and more vehicle oriented. But then it also will like reduce some of the parking requirements for some of them, like on South Main Street, where it might make it more beneficial for new development. So that will be a big conversation on Tuesday. That will probably be a little bit more of an intense discussion than we typically have, because it's just not our usual. Just pointing out in the book that I've got, I also have our most recent annual report is in the book. I think it's after the rules of procedure for the work plan. So I've got that. So that goes through a lot of what I've already talked about for today. This is our annual report from last year and our investment statistics, and about our events. And then I also have information about our facade grants. I think you're on that now, Gary. And then also I have a copy of our downtown updates from May. Usually we send an email newsletter out to businesses. Usually we send one out weekly that's got farmers market information, but then we send one out specific to businesses, usually about once a month. And then every couple of months, I try to send a paper version that has some of that same information in case people don't read the newsletter. Or see the newsletter, just so it's got particularly about street closures. That's the main one I try to make sure everybody knows about. And I think that's pretty much everything that I've got in your books.
So for those newsletters, will we be on the list for that so we can see what it is that you're doing and what you're sharing?
Yeah.
Take a request of that, or how's that?
I'll make sure that y'all are on it. Anybody can sign up for them, but I'll make sure that all the board members are recipients of them. Cause I might not have added everybody yet. And it comes from info@downtownhendersonville.org. And so that's one that you kind of do make sure that it might go into spam sometimes. And I send the next one, I'll forward it to everyone, so that way as everybody can check their spam filters. Okay. It's an hour and 15 minutes, so it feels pretty good. Any other questions from anybody?
So being on this board, is there any ethics kinds of things or conflict of interest or anything like that that we need to be aware of by serving on the board?
There is that, that's probably something that you would have signed on in the application.
Okay.
I need to check on that. Because there is a handbook for boards just for the citywide general city. I don't have that in here.
That seems familiar.
I mean, the primary thing is not to take any action on the board that would financially benefit you, which you
Yeah.
in theory could do. Because there are sod grants, things like that. What does that mean? You just need to ask other board members to recuse yourself from a vote if that were to come up.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, but that's the primary ethics potential impact.
Yeah.
Is for you or for a family member to receive some sort of financial benefit from the action that you would take.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing specific to the downtown board. But there is like a citywide, I believe there's a handbook. I'll make sure that everybody has that. That's probably good for the organizational meeting, so that because some of the standing ones. That's a good question. A lot of times, just kind of as board members, particularly, a lot of times y'all will hear things and hear complaints more than I hear them. And so that's always good to either bring to the board or bring me, and I can either add it to the agenda, or if it's something small, I try my best. If it's something that we can if it's something on the street that's going wrong, if you just contact me, that's not even just for board members, that's for anybody. I'll make sure there's that needs to get done. I mean, you could bring it to the board meeting, but also if it's something small that could be done without being to the board, I can usually at least try to get it taken care of. A lot of times, the last few years we've had about events and street closures. That usually kind of comes around every so often. I guess Lou's been here for a long time. He can attest to that, closing the street down for events.
But once you're on the downtown board, the two things I guarantee you talk about is something are parking events.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard
It will happen if it hasn't already.
Yeah. And you'll have people who had the conversation already be like, we've already addressed it.
Yeah.
But also knowing that there's always things that we can gather new ideas from. And there's sometimes things that are just they are what they are. And there's like, particularly with events and closing the street down. In the recent years, the public safety side of things has just changed so significantly that
I can speak to some of that just in terms of, when I first started, it was like me putting out little yellow sawhorse barricades that wouldn't stop a tenure on a bicycle from, getting into an event space, and the efforts to further harden events that our public safety folks have really been very involved in over the last decade have just really shifted how quickly and smoothly you can set up and do an event. So a lot of our longstanding events have really spent a lot of time and money and energy adapting to the realities of, doing these kinds of street closures and looking for ways to be safer and to provide a safer event space. At the end of the day, it's very, very difficult to make a street 100%, locked up. But the effort to move more in that direction is something that really has kind of stretched out some of the timelines. And so it becomes much, much more important, kind of twofold, to have this board really consider whether or not a new event is going to contribute to the vitality of the district, and even at times reviewing existing events and, assessing how they're functioning. I mean, there's a reason why Asheville stopped doing.
They'll share.
They'll share. So I think that's a real key piece. And then the other piece is, as we keep going forward and get super creative, with some of our bigger ideas about a downtown park or, a public space, is to have a space that's specifically built to host events and can be secured and contributes to the city in that way. And maybe we're able to have more events, but they're much less impactful in terms of, in a negative way. Hopefully they continue to be impactful in terms of bringing people into the district, but which I think they would. But yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Parking's, I got a similar scribe on which I can do as well, but I won't bore you all with that. We can turn that on anytime we need to.
Yeah, we will, like, usually after this year's kind of a weird one, because we had, or I guess maybe not, last year it was the hurricane. It was like, once the parking fund is more stabilized or it's not receiving funding from the city, you'll probably come back and see if there's any type of changes on the parking that we might want to do. But we had a few changes that we did immediately after the paid parking started, that to try to alleviate some issues, and then trying to not change too many things.
Are we in the middle of year, we're starting year 3 or? In the middle of year 3?
And I think, I think so.
Yeah.
It was being built when we were here,
So it was March 2023.
Yeah, so
it came on board.
Yeah,
So that might be something that comes about.
definitely be a discussion when we do our budgeting for this year.
Yeah.
To see how that fund is doing.
Yeah.
So this may not happen, but if the media ever approaches us and asks us a question, who do we direct that to hand that off?
Yeah.
Okay.
There might be some times where I'll send the media to a business too, if it's one that I trust to speak. They can say what they want to say, but also that I trust that won't say things too bad.
That would be fair.
Yeah. And we do, sometimes we'll have different opportunity, like for fun side media, like a lot of times with they want to come film something about downtown, I try to split them up into different businesses and spread that around based off of what they tell me that they want to have. That's most of the media that I end up working with, is the good side of where they just want to say, oh, come to downtown. Good question. Anything else? Everyone's gonna be here next week. No one's running away. I will say, I don't do any of the other boards that this is probably the best one of the city boards and commissions, because we get to do, you know, there's difficult conversations sometimes, but also we do a lot of fun stuff.
I think 7,000 committee is way better than the downtown committee. We don't have to, worry about any questions about Fairmont.
I thought about that as I was driving in front of it. I was like, oh my goodness.
Lou would be the one on that.
I've had questions, but it's like, I don't have to go in depth. Just give my opinion.
I just tell what I see, what I read in the newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any updates on them being able to restart. We're actually tracking it now just from a, code perspective. So far, it seems like the site's being, secured continuously, but obviously like any vacant thing, building, work site, whatever, home, it's gonna deteriorate. But we're watching that, and there's a lot of really complex and difficult to track timelines associated with development approvals and when cities can do certain things. At the end of the day, one of the questions that I get a lot that I spend an amount of time talking about is like, why doesn't the city have, some sort of bond or like a financial element in the development? And cities, we don't have the legal authority to do that when it's private development. So we do have bonds for subdivisions. So like if a subdivision gets started and they don't have all their sidewalks built or whatnot, they can bond elements like that. And then we would construct them if the developer did not. But when it comes to like a private building and private financing, we're not involved. We can approve, but basically it's up to the banks. And I don't know, but likely what's going to happen is some sort of bank turnover with that property. How many times it'll turn, I don't know. But the banks they'll want to try to get as much out of it as they can. And at some point, that may translate to a developer being able to complete the project. So yeah, not a very exciting answer, not one that I love giving, but also, it's a perfect example of like, when you have a community and you build a state government, and I think this is the way that it should be done, that empowers via the sort of capitalist approach, private equity and private funding to get projects done. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and the city really doesn't have. We're not empowered to have a specific seat in that table, which, I don't think we should be in a lot of ways. So,
But on the other side of that, where probably this board will look at some more is, so part of like the city council strategic plan that'll probably be in the economic vitality committee more is, so before the Cedars even came about, when the parking garage was being looked at, a hotel was being looked at for the Dogwood parking lot. And that, we started re-looking at that, and they put it out for bid and didn't have, because of the appraised value of the lot, didn't have any takers. So now looking at some alternative ways that the city could negotiate, was it called negotiated offer?
yeah,
And so still potentially looking at for the Dogwood parking lot as a hotel project, and the bigger picture, and what this board will look at probably in the next couple of years is either expanding the municipal service district to that area to make it, or having a separate one that's kind of like a hospitality district, because then that would cover like the inns and Cedars, if that ever is a thing. And so then having this general hotel area, greatest thing that could happen would also be some type of meeting space, conference type center. The Cedars was going to have that. So also talking with the TDA on what could potentially come about from that. Tourist Development Authority, could come from that, because then for downtown, having that, year-round traffic, like wintertime traffic of a convention space where they can walk all over would be pretty great. So that's the fun side of things. All right. I don't want to hold everybody unless you got any more. But thanks everybody for coming. Thank you for serving. It'll be fun.
We shall see.